I mean, unless you're hiding something.
If I was, I wouldn't be telling you now, would I?
I mean, you might. I don't know. But,
There are many things I hide from you, but none are important at this point in time.
oh, they're not important?
No,
Oh.
at this point in time.
Not at this point in time, huh?
No.
Well, in that case, I am just going to real quick onto amino. Not that one. Here we go.
Now,
Yes.
how exactly are we going to introduce ourselves? Do we actually give our names? Do we give our character names?
I was going to allow you the opportunity to choose one or the other. As I mean, Twitch knows me as Anvil-Runelord, and DM or anything like that.
Right.
Wait, so I should have set this one up too in advance. Podcast of sorts.
And podcasts, sort of.
Something like that, yeah.
Right.
Damn, I really should have
In
set this
some
up.
arenas known as podcasts. Well, live and learn, right? So next session you'll know what to do beforehand.
Oh, indeed.
.com.
I've actually gotten use out of that site. It's quite
Indeed.
Stay a while and listen.
Oh, Deckard. How long had it been?
I have never even played that particular game, though I've heard it's quite good.
Hmm.
So, I've
Beware the
officially...
butcher.
Beware the butcher.
Yes. Well, that's in the first one. He doesn't show up in the second one. The first one, oh my god. He is the bane because he shows up on like level 2 when you're just like brand new. Yeah. Any rate.
There was this one YouTuber, I think his name is Coyote Vision or something like that.
Yeah.
And he did a... There we go. Oh, damn it. It won't allow me to go to 30. It won't allow me to go to 60 frames per second.
Oh. Why not?
I don't know. You have to subscribe to something or something. But
Oh, okay. Ah.
here we go. The I'm assuming you can see it in motion, right?
Yeah, we're good. We're rolling.
Yep. That is the sped up version for Fiona in my process of designing her. So
Yes.
That should be set on loop. But
Okay. Give her the freaking elephant ears. That would have been funny.
It's on loop, so we should be good for a while. Yeah, I actually should have paid a bit more attention to the player's handbook while I was designing this one because because I just didn't want her to have the fucking damaged as fuck ears, and I didn't want her to have that massive fucking jaw,
Right. I will admit, she did come out a little bit thicker than I expected.
Well, this
I
is
mean,
the
not
very
that-
beginning. This is like the very beginning of it and all that. And she's still half orc. I definitely wanted her to be more orc than human, because otherwise there's just you might as well just fucking make a human with tusks.
Right. And
yeah.
freaking green skin. You scaled her down? Why'd you scale her down?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Not everyone can be Kalu's 7'9".
Yeah, right. Jeez.
Like I genuinely.
I don't think he ever plays a character that's under 6'6".
Not unless I make him.
Right, right, yeah, the dwarf, yes. And of course, the irony of that is the guy himself is
he's massive.
I think he's 6 foot. Yeah, he's like 6 foot. He's not like built up massive, but he's like 6'3". Probably good. 260.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, that he and I've always like ever since it was down to like you four before my my roommate and Alvin showed up, before those two showed up, I always remembered, I'm the shortest one of everyone here. Every single time I walked you guys out of the apartment. I was constantly reminded of that.
What's really interesting is that, I mean, at my other job, I work with many immigrants and women who are honestly on the team that I work on. I think the average height is like 5'3".
Oh
right?
shit!
I seriously, I feel like Gulliver among the Lilliputians sometimes, right? And then we have two like technicians, right? And both these technicians are between 6'6" and 6'8", right? They're just like huge guys, So, anyway, yeah,
I've never.
I see you with the cold weather.
I did
with Fiona, which. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because we did. I mean, if we grew up with in
the mountains
climate, in the mountains. So yeah.
I always knew that I wanted to give her that design, but what I was hoping for was that I would find alternate versions of that on Hero Forge, because I knew from experience that there was a male and female design for what you gave for Roland, and I was really hoping that I wouldn't be forced to make one that was basically Roland but 7 foot tall. You know what I mean?
With tusks.
Yeah. Like
it is a little unfortunate. Yes, you are right, because I mean,
there's only so much you can do,
right?
In regards to cold weather gear.
Well, yeah, but there's yes and no. I mean, having only one set of cold weather gear is a little. A little sparse pickings. I mean, I would be willing to bet that the company that molds these is probably in a warm climate area, and they don't quite understand, the cold weather gear. Well, you know how it is. You walk down the street and you have people in parkas and jackets and snow pants and no snow pants, depending on how
I mean, we live in Minnesota. We see people walking around in fucking swimsuits when it's like 30 degrees.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, we run the whole fucking gambit over here.
Yeah, we do. Yes.
Like when I was younger, I'll also real quick while you can see this, I genuinely debated with myself. I don't know if it's actually seen in this sped up version, but I went back and forth between the regular trident and the double-sided trident. Because the regular trident just looks.
Was the regular one, but yeah, you're right. It does look pathetic.
It really fucking does, man. Like
the head on that thing is huge.
It is like
the head on it is huge. Yeah. If you've ever seen an actual fishing trident,
it's not nearly that large.
Head, right. Even the ones that they fought with in the gladiatorial arenas were maybe 5 inches across, not a foot across. But of course, they are miniatures, right? So you do have to exaggerate a little bit just so it can make it. You can make it clear as to what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Now, yes, let's do the Peacemaker stance. That'll work.
Like this is a common problem that I've got with Hero Forge, and Kalu knows about this all too fucking well. The stances that they've got are so limited in what you can do.
Well, the thing is, the stances are. Oh yeah. Let's do one over dead.
I wanted to show off the range.
yes, I get that. I just think that's. I don't even know why that's an option with it. Oh, here we're gonna dance. We could dance. Yeah. Because the stances are all fairly. Yeah, like you're showing right here. The stances are all like a starting point, and you can sit there and rotate things.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to be honest, when I was creating Roland's figure, I don't know why. It took a lot of work to just get him to be holding the staff up in front of him,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Which, yeah, you would think that like having a staff point directly in front of you would be like a generic, starting point. But no, you had to sit there and craft the dang stance. So whatever.
I do know that there are plenty of there are like 2 or 3 stances now that do that.
That was well done.
Captain,
How you got her to hold it behind her head like that. That's just cool.
I grew up in an artistic household, so and let's just say that combined with my sense of perfectionism kind of played to a strength on this point. Like especially considering that the only bit of real information I had about Fiona as a character was from a single session. She was like a foster sister to Roland, a druid, and her main weapon of choice was a goddamn trident. So, taking that, taking that, and the fact that
looking at the list of weapons that she could have, and I remember she turns to it, she's like, "Could I get a trident?" You're like, justify it, and yeah, go for it.
Yeah, like taking that, like, admittedly, like, minimum amount of overall character development, and adding on to what the character ultimately inspired, I came up with this idea of like, well, what's a nice, decent stance for the character to have in this regard? I know, I'll just have her fucking Little Johnning that trident like in fucking Men in Tights. I'll just fucking do that.
Yes.
Except because I can't actually do that with the elbows, I'll just do it with the 2 hands. Why the fuck not?
Yeah.
And
because
I'll
a roll is a roll, and a toll is a toll. And if we don't get no tolls, then we don't get no rolls.
I made that up. No, man, like, yeah, Men in Tights is fucking great.
Oh, it's brilliant.
It really is. And I did have I should have looked that up, that scene. I should have looked that scene up while I was designing this, because I might have had a much more natural looking body by the end of it. But yeah, something that Hero Forge does very well in this, what we're seeing right here, is the idea that you can, the shoulders can be moved in this instance, and if you couldn't move the shoulders, this would have looked fucking terrible, and I would have just completely removed them. But
yes, let's go purple outlines.
Yeah, I genuinely did not know how far was too far in regards to the outfit, because someone who works with leather, I know exactly what leather looks like before you treat the damn thing. And I also know the type of... and the fur bits, I instantly knew exactly what I wanted to do, because anyone who knows anything about predator animals in like winter environments knows white.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be white fur, and especially in the mountains.
Either
like
white
that,
or like dappled. Sometimes you get this, a lot of animals have like a dappled, like, or a spotted. So like white with spots, or even like a light gray would work. But yes, you're right. You definitely want the lighter colors.
But at the same time, like,
but she definitely,
because of the fact that you still have to treat leather in order for it to actually take on a more clothing-like appearance, especially with clothing appearance that's so very well fitted to a person. It's going to have alternate colors to it. That's just what happens as a result of the
variances.
It's not the tanning process. Is it the tanning process? I could have sworn the tanning was I could have sworn that the tanning process was something else for like stiffening the leather.
Well, depending on how you tan it, you get either a stiffer. Well, no, because tanning and curing, by definition, make the leather very very stiff to begin with, like what your mask is.
Yep.
To get that bendable, supple feel to it, it has to be beaten. So you literally the more primitive tribes would would put it, would take a big rock and a small rock and just beat the crap out of this leather, and that would soften it and make it a lot more pliable and workable.
Mm-hmm.
But normally leathers, they do have different colors depending on the animal that they come from, and you're going to get variations on that. But if you want anything besides the range from tan to dark brown, you have to use dyes, right? And of course, at this point, you do have to think to yourself what dyes would be natural in the environment, right? If you want to make her as true to what she would have been as possible. So, like animal colors and what vegetation would be in would pretty much be your two choices. Of course, this being a magical realm, being D&D and all that, I see no problem with having a slight blue tinge, which works very well. A very white with light blue, which really does make you think of severe cold.
Yeah, more frozen tundra, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But more glaciers and more risk. Also, this part right here, the fucking facial features, they do not work well with the tusks, like, at all.
Well, because you can't really see it.
Like,
that's the issue.
Yeah, you can't really see it when it's subtle, and then when it's prominent, it just... Ugh.
Well, and that particular stance that she's taking right now is not much of a... It's a very relaxed pose. So you don't want to do like a war cry or a scream.
Yeah.
Not with a stance like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No,
so I thought that was quite well done.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I remember there were a couple of moments where I'm rotating her around. I'm just doing this this part right here.
Yeah. I see you're making sure that the the drapes match the curtains, if you will, that the facial hair matches the hair on the head.
Sure. Well, yeah, because for the most part, people tend to have eyebrows the same color as their hair. Although it's like
yes.
I forget if the eyebrows.
This actually kind of bothers me a little bit, especially with, for example, anime. You have a lot of people a lot of characters that are in anime that are drawn with blonde hair,
mm-hmm.
and yet they still have the really dark eyebrows. And I kind of want to go, you know what? Now I understand why they do that because blonde eyebrows don't show up on camera very well, so you can't have.
They really don't.
No, they really don't, which is unfortunate. But well, there is a trick.
For anime specifically, a lot of the times I say a lot of the times, like I'm fairly certain, like 99% of all protagonists in anime are either Caucasian or Japanese, and as a result, if you have blonde hair with skin tone of that particular color, because let's be real, they don't exactly give the most realistic skin tone when it comes to Caucasian skin tones.
Well,
it's basically peach, but really, really yellow.
Right.
So, but yeah, like it, and so when it comes to like hair, you can exaggerate the hair color a little bit, but you're still pretty much going off of the shadows.
There is a little bit of a trick to portraying the concept of blonde hair in a drawn setting, and it's because I have taken classes in drawing. My mom is a phenomenal artist,
mm-hmm.
and it's simply light lines and almost like undertones will really show up. Which will give the viewer the perception that there is light hair there, a greater amount than is actually drawn. So
I can see that.
Yeah. Of course, this is just at the base drawing level. Of course, when you start adding color and all that fun stuff, then things get a little bit wonky. But
yeah, I've done color a couple of times back when I was in high school and a little bit when I was in college. I was always more comfortable with the black and white
mm-hmm.
pictures and whatnot because
mostly
because I could do it. I was a lot more comfortable with black and white than I was with color. But I don't know if it was because I was just good at it and I didn't want to run the risk of bruising my ego, or if I just genuinely loved the black and white style. Because I did find out later on that I really, really love film noir. Like, I really love the black and white movies, and I love the shadows that they cast around. And
black and white. Yeah, black and
yeah.
white is a very different medium to work with than like regular color.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's you can almost do more with black and white than you can with color because there are more visual camera tricks that you can have and that you can use. Like, for example, like the classic scene from Psycho where the shower curtain parts and the woman is stabbed and they just show the blood running down the drain. Well, special effects wise, that was just Hershey's chocolate syrup.
Yeah.
So for like that, so you can have other things that if you were watching and if you were there at the time seeing it in color, it looks really weird because the colors don't match. But once you take the colors out of it, and then suddenly it starts looking a little more real. You can focus a lot more on textures than you can with color tones, which brings a whole new, opens a lot more windows.
I was really expecting you to bring up the ever so iconic lighting that happens in most like detective film noirs, where you've got the shutters, not the shutters, the blinds partly closed, and you've got those lines of shadow on the walls.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, that was done purely because the original film noirs, especially back in those days, they were the B movies with no budget. So that was so literally the blinds being partly closed like that, and you've got those grids. They were done specifically because they did not have the budget for proper lighting effects. So they had to manually, in real time, like use the shutters to put in just enough light to give the effect, and now it is an iconic piece of black and white movies.
So they didn't have the time to sit there with their light meter and make sure that everything was correct. And
they didn't have a light meter.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, like they were the B movies. They just didn't have the budget or the ability really to do what they normally would have done. So this.
Well, and now with in filmcraft, now you're getting into the concept of the constraints of your medium dictating a lot of what happens in the storyline. Even the whole thing with one of the things that Star Trek is most famous for is the matter transmitter, right? The more matter, the beaming, beam me up, Scotty. The whole reason that they did that in the first place is because they didn't have enough money to do an entirely new set and an entirely new model for a shuttle, right? So they were thinking, okay, how are we going to build this shuttle? How are we going to film this? How are we going to do all this? And I think Gene Roddenberry, don't quote me on this, I'm not entirely sure, but I think Gene Roddenberry just said, well, what if we have just like direct site to set transportation with like matter transfer? And they're like, well, okay, yeah. So that's where that whole idea came from.
I do like that you brought up the constraints dictating what the story can do, because I actually have been noticing that a lot in our D&D campaign, actually. Bringing it full circle back around to Fiona. Fiona had, like, obviously because her player was, like, fresh off the block, never played D&D before in her life. Like, because she didn't know anything about, like, necessarily the world or even the cultural differences between races, her name,
I think she just walked in there wanting, yeah.
Like her name, a mononym name. Well, in like, I had to work with something, because at the time I was fresh off of watching Critical Role and D&D streams much like that, where the DMs basically give his players personalized stories, right? And connected to their history. So in Fiona's case,
that's rather interesting, because most of the D&D campaigns I've been in, and the person who actually introduced me to D&D, at least to a group that would allow us to, where we could get together and play with. My cousin, one of the things that she loved most about D&D was creating the backstory herself. Having a character concept, and then you start thinking to yourself, okay, why would this person have this particular trait? Why would they, have this particular viewpoint? What events in their life happened to lead them up to the point where, they held this particular viewpoint or this particular, prejudice or
Yeah.
this particular fear.
Yeah, I like to think that I have gotten a lot better at implementing that into the NPCs that you meet and the even the cities that you meet. But Fiona was the very first one that legitimately sparked it, and it was all because of her player's decision to have a mononym name. It was the Fiona. I don't remember if I ever. I'm fairly certain I told at least one of my players. I know I've told at least one of you, but did I ever tell you explicitly that it was this Fiona right here that inspired the creation of the Jirahai?
No, you did not tell me that. I think that's awesome.
She was the reason why the Jirahai exist. The entire desert-dwelling warrior race was created specifically because Fiona's player couldn't think of a last name. Or didn't want to come up with a last name. I don't know. But because of that, I was just thinking, like, what would inspire her mother to give her this name?
Well, I mean, in the D&D lore, it does say that you'll take. I mean, when you have a half race, they will generally take a half race character. They will generally take the name from either the mother's culture or the father's culture, and seeing as her mother is also a half orc.
Oh really? I thought she was whole orc.
No, she is also a half orc herself.
Okay.
But
so Fiona, unless her father was also half orc, Fiona would technically be quarter orc.
Well, here's the weird thing. I did kind of look into that, and to be considered a half elf or a half orc, or one of those half races,
halfling.
You could. Well, halflings are halflings. They had to think up some kind of name that wasn't Hobbit because that was trademark. You know how it is.
Yeah, because in the original in D&D First Edition, they genuinely called it hobbits and balrogs, and they basically took the races from Tolkien's work and put it into their game.
His estate said,
no,
copyrighted. So either you pay us royalties, and they're like, okay, we'll think of something more generic sounding. Yeah,
which is understandable, but also very unfortunate because I feel like a lot of people would be playing hobbits, halflings a lot more if they were called hobbits.
Well, especially in the D&D universe, the halflings have some incredible abilities and natural talents that I mean are in some cases overpowered. And so you're right, they are very much an overlooked race. A lot of people think, oh, you know what, I want to be a tall, noble, fill in the blank, and then this little like halfling comes up and just like throws a fireball in your face, smoke. Anyhow. Yes. So.
Yeah.
Now it's the interest the relationship between Fiona and Roland though is kind of interesting because I never considered it a
familial,
romantic, far more familial because I mean their age gap is pretty significant because I believe that Roland is like 33. I believe, and Fiona is in her like late teens, early 20s, right? So that's a good, 10-year, 13, probably 10 to 13-year difference. Plus, there's also the fact that that Roland was adopted, if you will, or taken into her household at the age of like 10 or 12, right? When he had the family tragedy, and so essentially he was there when Fiona was born and as a child, and coming from having three siblings, the oldest, three younger half siblings, the oldest of which is 7 years younger than I am. When you see someone go through those processes, there's really no romantic tell
that to George R.R. Martin.
Well, in all honesty, he did take a lot of his inspiration from European historical things, and let's be honest, they didn't really, especially with the royalty, they didn't exactly
care.
They weren't care. It was like children were tools to form alliances and not too much else. So,
At least with the higher ups.
Oh yeah, but yeah, yes. So yeah, it would be very much like
Mm-hmm.
older brother, like or even older than that actually,
Mm-hmm.
because a brother implies that you're going through childhood at the
More
same
like an
time,
uncle.
and they didn't. Yes, more like an uncle.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, but yeah, so they yep.
Barring Omen's mysterious past, I think Roland is the oldest in the party, actually. Because
Yeah.
Kalu's like 17 years old. I'm pretty sure Alvin's only like mid 20s.
Hmm.
De Grisniak doesn't count because he's an old man. And he's not even technically a member of the party. He's just the
Well,
boss.
yes, plus he's not really a part of the party. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
because he's kind of come and gone, and that's more in character rather than or in storyline
Yeah.
rather than like a player that decided not to
Mm-hmm.
come for a few days.
Yeah.
um, but the thing is, uh, the druids the druid's main ability or main stat is wisdom, right?
Of course.
And yes, and you can't have an 18-year-old very wise person. And I mean, it's because wisdom is accrued with life experience, right? And in
I
all
would say
honesty,
so.
yeah, and in all honesty, I probably should have made him even older than that, probably in his like 40s or 50s, which is not too old for a half elf, but he still has to keep up with all these young little whippersnappers.
I would argue that
So
if you're like, okay, here's my thing. Unless, of course, you're living in a very reclusive society, if you are like 50 years old and you're a level 1 in regards to a character's level, I question what the fuck you've been doing.
yes, and
Like, and that's something that
even in your
you.
30s. But you also have like wizards,
Mm-hmm.
because
Well,
wizards
well,
by
yeah, but
definition
even
it takes
even
them some
then,
time.
yeah, like, but
Yeah,
even then, like, wizards spend literally half in lore at the very least have to spend decades learning their spells. What do you typically think of when you picture the stereotypical wizard? You either think some snot-nosed fucking British kid who had a decent book series, or you think Merlin. You think
right. Well,
Gandalf.
the thing with the yeah, exactly. But with the snot, they have that whole magic user, that is some kind of a prodigy, young prodigy magic user, the covered under the sorcerer, category, right? So, uh,
Mm-hmm.
sorcerers, of course, being having magic innate to them and not necessarily getting it through study. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, in all honesty, sorcerers are almost like X-Men mutants, really.
They could be. They very well could be. Kind of like how half orcs and whatnot are, could be construed as mutated orcs or mutated humans. You've got sorcerers who are just mutated in terms of like their, I don't know, their spiritual pressure.
Well, it's an innate genetic thing for
Yeah, yeah,
sorcerers,
yeah. Of
really,
course.
or it is something that has been bestowed upon them, not necessarily something that they worked for.
Mm-hmm.
Lazy schmucks. Anyhow,
I'm sorry. Smoke. Going back to
well,
him.
he's not. He wasn't exactly the. It wasn't the most pleasant experience for him to acquire his ability. So I think it's at least a minimal compensation for literally having been through hell. At any rate.
Sure thing. Sure thing.
Yeah.
They're lazy
But,
until it applies to your golden goose.
well, he is a wild magic sorcerer, so I did have to sit down and think, okay, how the heck did he acquire his powers? Because that the wild magic sorcerer is a rather interesting animal, and I'm really glad that Xanathar has brought out a new batch of options for them to use, where they didn't
Mm-hmm.
either they're not the son of a dragon, which which, him being part halfling, or him being a halfling, would lend rather interesting mental images to any part of his ancestry. But
it was a giant halfling and a dwarven dragon.
Right.
It was a gnome dragon.
Right.
Only the size of a carriage.
It was a drake. It was a pet dragon that got a little frisky. Yeah, no kidding. Well, of course, dragons are shapeshifters, so, or at least the older ones are. So, I mean, I would have to assume that that's how the draconic bloodline got started. But anyhow,
I can imagine.
Yes. So now the irony of Fiona is that the player accidentally went and created the most tanky possible combination in the game.
No idea what the hell she was doing.
Oh yeah, we're just like,
no idea.
Orcs are cool. We'll do a half orc, and then we'll just do generic fighter. Oh my gosh, right?
This bitch ain't gonna go down for another 6 turns after being dropped to 1 HP.
Right, seriously. I mean, come on. They've got the second wind ability from being a fighter, and they have the just refusal to go down that the orcs have.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so yes, if you go down to 0 HP, you can choose to go back up to 1, and then you know what? I'm just gonna roll another D10 and add that onto my HP just for fun, because I get a second wind as a fighter, right? And then of course the Great Weapon Mastery. Oh, good lord!
Oh, did she take Great Weapon Mastery?
She did take Great Weapon Mastery. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And right.
Oh fuck that! I forgot all about that. That. Hey, what's up, Root of All Beers? Yeah, no webcam this time around. This one is the most important bit is Fiona, the long lost orc fighter that was in my original founding 7. After we're done talking about Fiona, we'll be going into Hero Forge and designing one of the other long lost players, and hopefully that'll work too. But no, yeah, like I remember talking, whether it was about whether to you or if it was with her, the just broken bullshit she would be able to pull off, like now, let alone at higher levels.
Oh yeah. Yeah, at level 6, oh my god! See, she would have been the definition of a tank.
Yeah, Kahlo's the fucking.
We've been
yeah.
No, Kahlo's the barbarian tank, and he's really good at dealing out damage, and his ability to take half damage while raging, really helps in situations.
The Sun Thief.
But yeah, oh god, yeah, yeah. Well, let's just bypass the fact that the player himself, oh my god, like rolls the craziest rolls. So I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it when he rolled at disadvantage and still managed to roll a natural 20.
Oh, that was
insane.
That was bullshit.
Yeah, because I love the player's non-reaction. His reaction is a non-reaction.
His reaction to that whole thing was, okay, I'm not going to touch this dice tray. I'm just going to pick up my webcam and move it so that you see what the hell I just did. It was...
and you know it's crazy because when he's about to bust out laughing, his face just freezes. And he was looking at it, he was just like, okay, I'm going to show you guys this. Oh.
That was a night. So for context, I don't remember which session it happened. This was definitely like a year ago. It was... He decided...
Are you talking about the 2 natural 20s?
No, I'm talking about the first time he became the Sunlight Thief.
Oh, yes.
We were in the standard tavern for the players, right? And he decides, for an all good fun, to pickpocket the thief in our party. Who is, like, his backstory is, he is an assassin, he is a thief. You know, I'm gonna just... I'm gonna pickpocket him.
You're getting past yourself.
Yeah. So, he pickpockets our cleric, And so our barbarian pickpockets the thief in an open room in front of everybody, and he succeeds. He rolls higher than the assassin thief and gets more gold than the assassin thief stole.
Well, no, that's not the first time that it's happened. Remember? I mean, I think.
Well, I don't remember the first time it happened. If that's not it.
No. Well, I think this was the first time that we were actually in the tavern in Stormwind, right?
Yeah, because Giorno fucking chugged dragon's ale.
Yeah, we had Giorno. Our thief wasn't with us then because it was our ranger assassin.
Well, I say thief because his backstory was that of an assassin who stole stuff. So he himself was a ranger, but he was lore wise.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, lore wise he was a thief assassin.
Yeah, but because the priest, the freaking cleric, fails his con save. Of course, no. The first one he succeeded.
No, that was the ranger. The ranger succeeded, and then went back again later.
Right. Well, no, that's right, because he polished off the drink that the cleric dropped as he fell to the floor drunk off his ass.
Yeah.
And And I think it was even then he got the next level of renown when we were trying to get into that inn to investigate the
murder.
The murder.
Who did he pickpocket in broad fucking daylight?
No, he didn't pickpocket them. He decided that he was going to sneak in full plate mail, right?
Through the front door, if I remember correctly.
No, it was the back door, but still, it was
the equivalent to it was the equivalent to the front door because there were guards stationed there.
Right, and the guards were busy with was it Giorno?
Yeah, it was Giorno.
I think the guards were busy with Giorno, and he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna walk in. I'm gonna sneak by, but I'm just gonna walk in, and neither of them notice
until Giorno royally fucked up.
Yeah. Well, he had a really good thing going in.
He did
in dropping the random noises.
Yeah, he really fucking did. He really did. But then he decided to walk up to them before casting the subjection. Yeah. That was something. We keep on going to other players. Yeah. Let's get back to Fiona, please.
Yeah. But I was thoroughly impressed because I didn't even realize what she had done because I wasn't familiar with all of the different stats and the different races and
especially considering that I'm fairly certain you have not ever played a fighter in your life. I'm fairly certain you've never touched the class.
No, I played a ranger and I played a couple other things, but yeah, no, I haven't done a melee character yet. But yeah, so I remember going into the player's handbook later on and doing a little bit of a delve into let's see what this class does, let's see what this class does, and I looked at some of the racial abilities that the half orcs have. And then combined with the abilities that the fighters have, and I'm like, holy crap, she is never going down ever.
And she really fucking wouldn't have. Like, especially with some of the stuff that you could have found in the catacombs. Like, imagine if she had found the Sword of Vengeance. Holy shit.
Oh, that would have been scary.
It would have been.
That would have been scary, yeah. Yeah. But the irony of it is kind of interesting to compare the players to their characters themselves, because the player herself is
quite small.
No, she's not quite small. She's.
Oh no! Yeah, no. Sorry, she's only like 4 inches shorter than I am. Yeah.
She's got to be 5'7", 5. Well, 5'6", 5'7" at least. But she can't weigh more than 130 pounds soaking wet. So, I mean, and I'm sure that when she was creating the character of Fiona, she's like, you know what, I just want to make, I want to make something, big, brawny, and tanky, And
I want a trident.
Yes.
Just give me a trident. That will be my weapon.
If I recall correctly, yeah, she was just looking at the weapons list, and she's like, you know what? Could I have a trident? And you're like,
sure.
Write something in your backstory, but sure.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think I did. I require a backstory for the weapon?
If it was sufficiently unusual, yes.
Yeah, because I remember the tridents like being in the. Well, you can still go ice fishing with tridents. You know.
Yes.
You can still do ice fishing with tridents. I don't think it would have been that out of the blue.
Not completely, but
I do know when the fuck did I give her a javelin of lightning? Because I remember giving her a javelin of lightning. Do you remember?
Did you? I don't remember you giving her a javelin of light. No,
I'm fairly certain I did, because in the second session, when she was busy, I played the character for her and I chucked the javelin of lightning at a zombie. It was something like that, yeah.
Was this when you were doing the? Well, I don't know. Okay.
I think it might have been along. Oh yeah, it might have been along the same lines as how you got your decanter of endless water. Either or.
Okay.
Either or. I remember giving her one of those things. Yeah.
When we came back from our first mission to the castle outside of Albermere.
Albright.
Sorry, they both start with A. I keep mixing them up. So yeah, that castle outside of Albright. When we finished up that mission, we came back into town, and you actually gave each of us something like special or unique or unusual. That's when Roland got his decanter. That's when our half-elf barbarian got his
Axe of Giant Slayer. Mm-hmm. Which wasn't going to be like giant slaying for a while, but I figured, you know what, someone like him, he's not going to really find too much use out of an item like the Decanter of Endless Water. So let's give him something that's very straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, and then the dwarf got the amulet of like health or something like that. So he's con.
Where he got like +9 to his constitution or something like that.
Well, his constitution was raised to 19.
Yeah.
So he got +4 per his level. Yeah, a dwarf monk with 19 constitution. Good luck. But yeah, and then Fiona got the javelin of lightning. That's what it was. Yeah.
Okay.
But so yeah.
But I could have sworn, didn't she have a sword as well? I know that she had.
Well, she definitely had an off weapon for sure. She definitely did that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just remember that when those suits of armor attacked us, and she just wound up and
boom
right through the breastplate. Holy crap!
Yeah,
that was insane.
It was fucking ridiculous. I actually still have the models for the animated armors now. Yeah, they were originally bought as gifts for the players involved, but since then, and for other reasons, it just never happened. Now they're used as like color palettes. Like, I legitimately use them to test the colors before I put them on the minis.
That makes sense.
It works really well. Problem, it doesn't really reflect the actual colors properly when it comes to the premium plastic stuff.
Right. Well, it was
kind of a different in texture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you did get a few of those. I noticed when people do 3D print things, that when certain angles you get like holes in the plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think those armors they did suffer a little bit of that, if you will, material pixelation.
Well, a little bit. Yeah, they've got some pores to them.
Bad. Yeah, it wasn't bad, but they were there, which obviously is going to affect the visual, how your paints look after they get placed on a surface like that. So.
Yeah. Fiona herself, do you remember much about the conversation you and she had when you were deciding for your characters to come from the same place?
It was pretty spontaneous. I have to admit. I mean, we had to. I had decided on a half-orc mentor when it comes to Roland's druidic abilities. Mm-hmm. And she had a half orc, and she's like, "Well, hey, what if I'm your mentor's daughter?" I'm like, okay, I'm fine with that. And then okay, so we both started we came from the same place, and it did kind of set up the dynamic a little bit because of the planned dynamic between the two characters. It made it fairly obvious, that Fiona would be your basic caster tank relationship, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Fiona would be the one, swinging the blade or the trident or what have you, keeping things busy, and then Roland would be in the back, using spells for support or like taking out big groups while they focus on her.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
When it came to Fiona, I think she was the one that I was the most, not necessarily disappointed in, because that gives a certain negative connotation towards the player. I was the most saddened is also the wrong word for this. I regretted more of Fiona's disappearance than I did literally any other character, literally any other player. Because, well, with the exception of Morgan and Odo, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
with the exception of those two, because those two characters genuinely brought such a unique dynamic, and like even more so with Odo in the villain campaign, being the very thing that Smoke was ultimately after, in secret. That would have been a really good turn, depending on like when and if you guys found out about him. But with Morgan, it's a very similar thing. But with Fiona, Fiona was the one character, or the one player character, I should say, that was like, there was so much created simply by Fiona being there, and with her gone, like, if it weren't for the fact that it's the culture's there now, I would have felt like I had done so much work for nothing,
Well,
now,
at least she left a good legacy.
Yeah, like at least now there's something of like an homage to Fiona, as opposed to like, oh hey, just so you know, this character was actually like, your mother is a huge fan of the warrior hero Fiona, and that's why she named you this. And, that's something that you can, you didn't know that? Well, here's some lore for you to look up and maybe go to the desert one day and have some information about it.
Yeah. And it really is unfortunate that she was only with us for like, what, 3 sessions?
It was 3 sessions total, because at the time so many of us like just couldn't make it, and the sessions kept on being canceled for like almost a month.
Yeah.
And I feel like
I think we did have some sessions canceled.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we did have quite a few where because we had enough people, we ran anyway. Like, you kind of have to sometimes.
Well, that like the first time she wasn't able to make it, it was like legitimately a her thing, and like it was like one player missing. We went from that one, and the next time
the thing with D&D though is that you do need to have. Well, with D&D, you do need to have at least 10 sessions to really get into and understand the game, because it's going to require probably that many before you get your awesome finishing move moment. I mean, in all honesty, Roland had his, I think, in session 3, when we were fighting those armors for the first time, and he just walks up to the armor and casts Thunderwave and just boom, blows it back into the wall and shatters the thing, And I'm like, here comes the boom, boom, So I mean, that was, yeah. But the thing is, like, as a player, you need to have that kind of moment where you're like, oh my gosh, this character is really cool. So this game is really cool, And if you don't stay in it long enough to get that moment, then yeah, it does kind of peter out a little bit. But I'm telling you that first session that we had, that session 0, because I think we had 2. I think we almost ended up having 2 session zeros because
almost, but thankfully we only had the one.
Yeah, and I was the only person there that brought the player's handbook. Everyone else pulls out the PDF and like, oh, we can do it with this. I'm like, no, you can't. Not with any kind of reasonable amount of time.
In my defense, I didn't think I'd need it at the time.
Yeah, no. I have no issue. You're the DM. You're not necessarily supposed to, right? It's not that big a deal. But as a player, you kind of want to have at least a couple players' handbooks to pass around so people can figure out, okay, how exactly do you do this? How exactly do you do this? Because there are a lot of terms that the book introduces and then starts talking about, on a regular basis. And if you don't know what it's talking about, then you have no. If you don't know what the term means, as was defined earlier in the book, then you get totally lost. It was okay. What's your wisdom modifier again?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, something as simple as that has been confusing to a number of players I know.
Oh yeah. Well, and then of course you have the very basic difference of a saving throw versus a check,
mm-hmm.
right? So the saving throw, you get your proficiency added onto it. Well, with a check, you don't, right?
Yeah.
So, I made little details about like that because I'm fairly certain that the first few sessions we played the game fairly wrongly.
You don't say.
Yeah. So.
You don't say.
Uh-huh.
Even actually, that is a decent enough segue into the next part here. Assuming that she would still be here, how do you think the character would be now that we are playing the game the correct way, or the very least more correctly?
Right. She was set up Fiona was set up from the beginning to be a badass. She would have been a badass.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question about that.
So let's be a bit more streamlined because obviously with only like 2 or 3 sessions, there's no real way to tell. But how about, say, for instance, during the undead uprising in the Stormwind, how do you think she would have reacted to the undead?
Well, see, now you're talking questions about more on the player themselves rather than on the character per se.
That's fair.
But the character of Fiona,
yeah,
she probably would have been freaked out. But I would assume that her character's reaction to being freaked out about something is to kill it a lot. So, yeah.
Oh, I just sorry, continue. I just realized something.
Oh yeah, what did you just realize?
I realized we skipped over a very interesting interaction. Kalu. How the hell do you think these two characters would have interacted?
We did discuss that. We actually did discuss this at the beginning, when the character of Kalu was introduced.
Really?
Because I'm fairly certain that at least I turned to one of the other characters and said, one of the other players and said, "Gosh, it's too bad he didn't ever meet Fiona." Of course, at that point she was one city away and she was already married.
Which I have.
So it's not like anything would have come of it.
Mm-hmm. Which, on the one hand, I'm fine with it per se, but as a DM and as a friend to her, I kind of have to wonder, like, honestly, is that really what she would have wanted Fiona to do? Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but I found that a lot of new players, unless they're playing like a bard and going like hypersexual, like, I'm going to seduce that one. A lot of players typically play their characters as completely asexual in regards to like social interactions, and I can't help but wonder, in retrospect, if I could have just simplified it by going, oh yeah, she just, she got a job as a bodyguard. You know what I mean?
She would not have done that because
No?
It would have taken it right, because I don't know if this was something we discussed with you, but I know that her mother, my Shautha, Roland's mentor, did tell her to watch over Roland, right? And
Ah.
since that is what she had been doing, up until that point, in her life,
Mm-hmm.
uh, then that's not too much of a stretch to say that she would have done it. That she would have simply continued in that role, but um, it would have taken something more extreme than finding a job and just wandering off to have her
Okay.
lead them. And it's more of a thing of responsibility, a sense of
Gotcha.
responsibility rather than any other kind of attachment per se.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, the familial and um, that sense of family that they would have had. But yeah, I think that would have been about the only uh,
Only thing aside from just being fucking axed down.
yeah, that would have really kept the character herself from um, fulfilling her duty in being the bodyguard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it also works canonically though when you think about it, as far as the uh, the race of half orcs themselves. They are, because they don't really fit into human society. They don't really fit into orc society. Kind of the same thing with half elves, is that they're used to being like distrusted and shunned.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with half elves, it's more like a displacement thing more than distrust per se, because they half elves themselves are usually fairly distrusted, fairly trusted, almost out of the gate. Which is why in the book it says that they do make really good counselors and advisors and stuff like that. But it's more like a displacement thing.
I get you.
So
Yeah.
wow, excuse me, sorry, brain fart. So because the half orcs are seen as by the human culture as being um, too volatile to be civilized, and in the orc culture they're seen as um, too weak to be of much use in battle, because they really are not as strong as like a straight up orc.
Oh, of
Um,
course not.
so they get that feeling of, yeah, we're not really accepted anywhere, um, which in my personal opinion, seeing as these races have had, humans and orcs and elves have had interaction with each other for years, I'm a little bit surprised that we don't have entire societies or entire cities just with half orcs and half elves. You know what I'm saying? But that's a whole other issue altogether. Um,
Well, I like to feel
so
like I.
she walks into town. If she walks into town and you know kills off some goblins and happens to save this jouster,
Mm-hmm.
and you know and this opens his eyes to what she truly is, rather than seeing what her family history is,
Mm-hmm.
and it realizes the quality of woman that she truly is, and falls for her. It would probably be quite a bit shocking, and that might be enough to have her uh, actually
Very fairy
come
tale
to the
love at
conclusion
first
that
sight thing.
Rowan kind of. Well, I imagine that it might have been love at first. Well, maybe not love at first sight on the part of the jouster, but um, uh, being a jouster, you're fairly certain that he's the type of person that would charge straight at a problem and just hit it with everything that he had. So he probably saw her after she saved him. He fell for her, and then probably was um, very direct in his approach, which is probably something that she would have really responded to.
Hmm.
You know,
Well, I guess that weight's been put off my shoulders.
yeah, no, it's about it's one of the very few reasons that I would have imagined that Fiona would have left the group.
I mean, now that we've got the Herald, there would have been that methodology, but I feel like that.
Yes.
I feel like that would have put a bit more stress than was necessary on trying to embody that for Roland. Because obviously, someone that you've known for all of her life, all of a sudden just disappears, and you're the only one who remembers her. Yeah, no, that would be. I feel like that would be a bit too much to try and roleplay.
Well, plus I mean, in that instance, you would be bringing Shoutha into it as well, because I guarantee you that if Roland would have remembered her and then sent a message back to her mother saying, "Hey, she's disappeared, and I don't know where the heck she is," and I've looked for her. I guarantee you that she's going to come down and look at try and see if she can find her daughter.
Yeah, and Mom's just going to be like, "Who?"
Shoutha would be an interesting character to have. Yeah, right. Now, Shoutha herself would be a very interesting character to have, because at the higher levels, druids get
freaky powerful.
Well, there is that, but there's also, I think, if you're a level 17 or 18, you get like natural body, where you only age 1 year for every 10 years that pass.
Ooh.
So yes, and being a half elf, I'm rather excited for Roland to get to that level, because that means that he could probably live to be about 200 or 300 years old, easy. Actually, no, longer than that.
I was about to say,
which is what I had in mind for Shoutha as well, because I mean, procreating is a very natural thing, obviously. So I don't, so a high level female druid would probably have a number of children throughout her lifetime, because that does give you a much larger amount of time to be fertile, if you will. So
I feel like if she were younger when she did that, by all means she would definitely do that. I feel like once you get to a certain age, even if it's like in regards to like what the fuck was that? Oh, no, okay.
Going with the hairstyles.
No, I was on the stream. The video just kind of like it went off into the corner and then came back.
Oh.
That was weird. Speaking as someone who doesn't actually know too much about her, because we haven't had any real need to go to where she is yet, I feel like once you hit a certain age, even if you yourself don't physically change, your mind is still going to get to that certain mental maturity to go, okay, that's it, I'm good. I don't need to have any more kids after this. I am good.
Well,
where's that ye medieval anti-fertility pill? Where the fuck is that?
I'm sure.
Merlin,
there's a
Merlin, get over here.
Here's a bush somewhere that could provide berries that could, be a bit contraceptive.
Here, Merlin. Here's 10,000 gold pieces. Cast the wish spell on me so that I only have kids when I want them.
Right. Well, and
it was like, oh, half orc.
Yeah. Well, and then right. Jeez. And then the thing is, I mean, as a person, it's a rather interesting philosophical or mental experiment to imagine what it would be like if you did have a life expectancy of, say, 500 years.
If I had 500 years, I hate to say it, but I think I would be... Well, if I didn't make it known, I feel like I would live more reclusively than I do now.
Well, I think you would end up moving here and there, but in this particular culture, this is a known phenomenon, right?
This is true.
Elves live for like extreme amounts of an extremely long time.
Mm-hmm.
Half elves, they don't live quite as long as regular elves, but they do live quite some time. And of course, different different types of magic can have someone live for a severely long amount of time. And
mm-hmm.
it's and druids, being by the very nature of what they are, it's not. I would assume that people would probably know that they could renew themselves with the land, and you know, so I mean, it's not exactly a secret thing. Um, so but I don't see any reason why you couldn't have you know. If you could expect to live, 500 or 600 years, that when you're the age of 375, that you might not decide, what, I could go for another couple of kids. Why not?
You're not
So,
wrong. You're not
and I
wrong.
was I was actually debating, and you're gonna I hope you don't hate me for this one. I was actually debating whether or not I should have Shoutha actually be like the daughter of Mouse. And a lot of druids, because Mouse is a half orc
You
as well.
you mean the character that you haven't even put forward yet?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But because
if you want to go right ahead, it's just a matter of you do realize that if you put him in there as her dad, you severely limit the timeline on which you can call upon Mouse. Like you could only play that character of Mouse within that very specific time frame of when he was alive and when he was like active.
Oh, but you're getting that timeless body thing or aspect to the character, as a druid, happens at level like 17 or 18. So it only depends on when he reached that level, and continued on from there. So anyhow,
Fair
so
enough.
yeah, or maybe yeah. So because in the D&D lore, a lot of druids, they're watchers of sacred places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would not surprise me at all if they decide to make if they decided to make it a family thing where, hey, I am the guardian of this particular sacred space, so therefore, um, you know, I'm going to impress upon any progeny that I have that show any talent for this to, the solemnness and importance of the duty here, and pass my knowledge and wisdom on. So make it a family, a family thing. So, I mean, it's a possibility. I could easily see it happening.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So, and maybe if not father, then maybe like grandfather or great grandfather, but maybe some descendant of Mouse would be kind of interesting. And like I said, when you live that long, having a number of children would not necessarily be out of the question.
Again, like I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that at a certain level, I know mothers now who have like 3 kids. Are like, okay, that's it, I'm done, and they're like,
Yeah.
and they're like 35.
Well, exactly, but think about it though, right? So you can only expect to live. Your average human will only live till somewhere from what 80 to 90 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have 3 kids, you're going to be dealing with those 3 kids until you are the age of 50, right? Well, but if you can live to be, if you can stand to live to, well, if you can expect to live until like 500 or 600 years old, right? Your kids leave the home, and they go out and start living on their own, and all of a sudden things get quiet. It is just you and your spouse if you're still together, or what have you. And it might, after a few more years, um, it might occur to you, you know what? I think I could do that again. So, and I've read a number of science fiction stories of people that people that have gained not necessarily eternal life, but much longer life than was expected.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, those kind of things like come and go. I mean, we don't really have a lot of direct experience with that because, at least as far as I know, we haven't had people that have lived more than say 120, at least not in quite some time. But that's a thing of a different discussion. So we don't necessarily know the psychological side effects of living that long.
I can imagine
and then of
that.
Course, there's the whole concept of the empty nester syndrome, where parents that, parents that have had kids in their houses for 20, 25 years, suddenly they don't have kids in their house anymore, and then they think things are just like really quiet. So those people, a lot of times they usually get a dog or something like that. But if you can expect to live for another few hundred years, I can easily see someone saying, you know what, we could have some more kids.
Perhaps. But so how do you feel like? How do you think that Fiona would respond to Degrizniak? Someone who is the species that caused Roland's family massacre.
Well, when you are at a remove of tragedy by that amount, you can sympathize with the character who has had the tragedy, but I don't think you would have the same deep, visceral reaction. One of the things that saved Degrizniak as far as Roland is concerned is his evident acknowledgement of the destructive nature of goblins in general. Mm-hmm. And his nature toward that one in particular, and there's the fact that he is a single goblin. He's not part of a goblin horde, which Roland was rather uneasy to begin with when we first hooked up with Degrizniak. But as a player, I'm like, yeah, I do realize that we need to find some way out of town.
The Golden Goblin Merchant.
Right. And you know what? The principle, the concept of free ride did kind of appeal to him a little bit. So,
you want to know something that I've been I wish I had thought of like a long time ago? An idea came to my mind about
what's that?
Like an idea for why Degrizniak hates these goblins so much. Now, obviously, there's the story about how they.
I have to admit, I honestly thought that you had already had that worked out.
I did, and I do. And that's why I wish I had thought of this one a bit earlier, because it stems from the idea that goblins are monsters. So why
they are.
So why the hell can Degrizniak speak? So, and that's where it sprouted and branched out to, well, goblins are monsters. And the only reason why Degrizniak is the way he is, and the only reason why his daughter is the way she is, and so on and so forth, is because somewhere in the past, some fae or demon or god blessed that bloodline with sentience. And so from that kind of mentality, we've got goblins who are basically just bipedal beasts, right? And then you've got the sentience.
I would actually dispute that, right? So they do have their own culture, as unpleasant as other races do find it. Excuse me. They do follow their instincts a lot more than your average civilized race, but
mm-hmm.
I mean, in all honesty, like a vampire is considered a monster as well, but they're perfectly loquacious.
No. I know what you mean by that. I'm just saying when this thought occurred to me, the idea of leaning into that monstrous side even more to the point where it's no longer, say, a cultural thing, and it's more of like a legit evil thing. Like, it can't even be classified as a monster anymore, because at least a monster you can figure out. But this is just evil, and just leaning into that outside of the context of D&D. I just liked the idea that came into my head. Is like, okay, what if at some point in the future, in like some other D&D setting or something like that, I run these goblins, and goblins are just 100% like almost mindless monsters and beasts and horrible, horrible things that can't even speak outside of goblin. And even then, it's like guttural noises that rely heavily on context for the other goblins to even understand. And all of a sudden, you've got this goblin who's able to walk upright. He's got a fucking feather in his hat. He's got a hat. And, he's fucking attempting to be a businessman. But here's the problem. Like, no one has ever seen a goblin who can fucking speak, let alone just stand up upright. So that idea came to me at one day. And I'm like, damn. I really wish I had gone with that because... Fuck.
Well, goblins are playable characters in the D&D universe.
No, I know, and until a player got that, and even if a player of mine chose to become a goblin, I would let that player know, hey, just so you know, you're a very rare breed. Like, we're talking 1 in 1,000 goblins have sentience. Mm-hmm. You are one of those 1 in 1,000. You have sentience.
Well, but like, then also, it does make one ask the questions about what makes goblins so dangerous in the first place. Because, I mean, really, if really they are like simply vicious, smaller, humanoid creatures, right? Then how could even in large forces, how much more dangerous would they be than a classroom of third graders? Because
the razor sharp fangs, the razor sharp claws.
Right. So you get a
and apparently their ability to breed rapidly.
Well, yeah, there's that too. But yeah, you get any like group of archers, and they can defend a town from a swarm of goblins. Because with less intelligence, you're not going to have any kind of formation. You're not going to have any kind of tactics, right? And it's that intelligence which takes a race up to the next threat level.
And that could also justify why goblins are so low on the challenge rating scale. Like, they just don't have that intelligence.
Right. But in the I think this was probably I forget which session this was, but the one where we actually managed to get underground.
Mm-hmm. Which
time? First time. Beneath the catacombs underneath the old castle. Right.
Oh,
and we saw those. That there was like 3 or 4 goblins,
which I should have woken up.
In the camp.
Y'all
with a
failed.
Tower.
Y'all failed your stealth checks.
Yeah.
Y'all failed to hit sleeping targets, and I'm just thinking, I really should wake them up right now. These goblins should, by any stretch of the imagination, should be awake for this.
And in all honesty, after we had fled, after the other group, other group of goblins had started coming after us, and then we fled, and then of course we ran across that slim bridge. I did have Thunderwave prepped as a spell, and it didn't occur to me until later. But later that night, I was reflecting back on how the session had gone. And I started thinking to myself, you know what? We probably should have stopped on the bridge and then I could have used Thunderwave to sweep just a shit ton of goblins over the side into the chasm below and just gotten whole crap tons of XP. But
I thought you were going to go with the idea of I should have just angled myself facing the sheer drop and Thunderwaved the sleeping goblins off of it.
I didn't realize we were that close because Thunderwave it
not necessarily.
Like
you weren't necessarily that close, but I'd have to try to find the old picture, and I think it could have been argued that at least one of them could have fallen off, or at the very least, like, been hurled and then rolled off.
Right.
Yeah. So, meeting
at
De
that
Grisniak,
point in time, we were still trying to get into the dynamic of the characters and how things.
Work,
how the different spells and abilities could play off each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we didn't have any. I think at that point in time it was just Roland, the barbarian, and the monk.
It was those 3 for sure.
I mean, at that point in time in the catacombs, that's who it was.
Well, those weren't the catacombs. That was just the Underdark.
Well, yeah. Well, the caves underneath the castle there. So yes.
Yeah. So meeting De Grisniak would kind of have been a non-issue. What do you think her response would have been to meeting Iona, the vampire?
Oh, that is a good question.
Because, obviously Iona was, like, player knowledge, she was evil. You know, she was an evil character. I think she was lawful evil. Was that what we,
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, no, so that was one of the reasons why she was even capable of joining the party.
Yeah, chaotic evil, Roland would have just put her down.
Well,
in fact,
I'm honestly surprised.
He was just close to doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I mean, if I really was going to play the character right, he would have just lit her up, because he the coffin opens, and we're just going to drop some flame in there. Sorry.
Well, here's my question. In that context, we know about vampires because it's ingrained in our culture for a very long time. It's a mythical beast that has become popularized over the years. And obviously in Dungeons and Dragons, there are mythical beasts all the time. So my question to that would be, how common knowledge are vampires actually? Like, how common knowledge would will-o'-the-wisps be, or revenants, or, like, obviously someone would have to have seen, or at the very least heard, stories of undead at least once. And because there are so many of them, and surely they can't all be true,
Right, and I do see what you're saying, but the PHB, the Player's Handbook, does say undead are the natural enemies of druids, and druids will do they see undead as a disruption of the natural order of life, and therefore will try and take them out as much as possible. So
do you have the ability to sense the undead? Because if so, there have been some minor...
Oh, no, he did.
Yeah, because if you can, there have been some minor NPCs that I definitely should have told you something about.
Well, he did have Detect Magic up.
Mm-hmm.
Because, remember, because we were looking at the doors, and he did cast it as a ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Because try to see if there's any trap on it. And that spell does last for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah. So I'm just a little curious as to whether or not being a vampire actually counts as having a radius of magic any differently than, say...
I think vampires are innately magical beings, because otherwise they would be just dead. They wouldn't be undead.
But that's a fair point. I'm just saying, like, in the context of the mechanics of that spell, like, if that could be done in such a way, then... Like, what would stop anyone from just constantly, say... Like, let's just put it in the most ridiculous fucking scenario possible. The druid is literally just sitting down, meditating style, and just constantly casting Detect Magic, and everyone else in the party is, like, literally either carrying or pulling him like a fucking sultan. And they're just walking around and going, magical beings here... you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, well, I can see it being done for, like, curses or enchantments and stuff like that. And I get the feeling that, like, for the undead, it would depend on the undead itself, Like, would we consider ghosts to be magical or spiritual? For instance.
Right.
And this obviously you've got things like, and of course you've got stuff like zombies and skeletons and whatnot. You've got animated armors. Like, animated armors, undoubtedly, yes, you could undoubtedly detect the magic that's animating the armor, even if it's standing still. But zombies, there's the question: when does the magic end? Does it end after the zombies have been reanimated, or does it end when the zombies' physical corpse has been brought down to death again?
Well, with zombies, if you remove the magic from them, they would just become a pile of rotting flesh and bones with no animated properties whatsoever.
Well, I would have to look up the monster manual again, because if I remember correctly, that's actually word for word what happens with the animated sword or the animated armors or rugs, like animated objects. Like it's word for word, basically what you just said. Like if you cast
Dispel magic.
Thank you, dispel magic. You cast dispel magic on those things, they're just done. They're gone. They just crumple to the floor. I don't remember them. I don't remember the monster manual saying anything about that for zombies. Which if it does, holy shit, do zombies and all forms of undead like that just become a fuck ton weaker than they already are?
Well, I would imagine they would probably have some kind of a saving throw.
Like I said, I'll have to look it up in the the monster manual again.
Well, I got it right here.
Oh, nice. It must be.
Unfortunately, it doesn't have under you. It doesn't have. Yeah, it doesn't have a specific category for undead. Well, let's see here, zombies.
Well, you can always go to animated first. That's near the beginning, and that should have the what I'm talking about when it comes to like if you cast dispel magic, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I remember correctly, and it does say that, then we would have some level of, not necessarily evidence, but we would have some level of context for what dispel magic can and cannot affect, and what detect magic could and could not affect.
Yeah. Well, I have played with dungeon masters that when I have been when I've been within range of undead creatures, I have cast detect magic and they become very evident. But
okay,
let's see here.
And again, that's fair. We haven't exactly had much cause for detect magic undead. Usually, you can tell by the smell.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's that smell of rotting flesh? What's that sound of guttural noises? Oh, there.
Yeah. And then,
okay.
Something. Yeah, and then suddenly something starts lurching toward you.
What's that strange hunched shadow in the distance? Right. What are those 20 other hunched shadows in the distance? So let's see. I don't think Fiona would have responded too much to, what was the dwarf's name? Slim. His name was Slim, yeah. Right. I don't think Fiona would have responded too much to Slim's disappearance one way or the other, just more surprised that he was warped out, you know?
Well,
but what do you think her response would be for...
we didn't really react too much to him with Cloud.
Yeah, because metagaming, I think we all knew that he wanted to switch characters for a while.
Right.
You know, so I don't think any of you really had that much attachment to Slim after that, other than the name of Slim Alabaster.
Yeah.
Skinny white guy.
Skinny white boy, yes. Yes. And he's a dwarf.
It's a fucking bald dwarf monk. Just fucking picture that.
Yeah.
But what do you think her response would have been for the not finished flesh golem that was in the basement? What do you think her response would have been to that?
She probably would have looked at it and thought, well, that's just disgusting. You know,
Probably.
I mean, when you think of the influences in her life, her mother was a druid, right? So she's going to have a lot of, viewpoints that are very similar to, the druidic philosophy of, when something dies, it is returned to the natural cycle of life, and that is the normal natural things to do, and removing something from that cycle is an abomination.
Yeah.
So yeah, and she probably would have thought that someone had some really nasty hobbies. So.
And that's fair. I can totally see that. Moving onward, what do you think? I'm remembering more and more of the chronological events that were taking place, and I'm just remembering how far we fucking come.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
It would be interesting to see though how she would have reacted to Lark.
Oh yeah, Lark.
That would have been an interesting I mean, because I'm sure that she would have been able to like respect his martial prowess, as it were,
Yeah, but
which
a
he didn't
single
show very much. But
yeah, but a single successful insight check would have revealed that this man is willing to kill for money, and that would be an interesting thing for Fiona to think about.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I don't think that she would have liked him very much.
Probably not, but do you think she would have been, I'm gonna use you as a meat shield, or do you think she would have been more like, oh, I wouldn't fucking defend this guy. I'm not gonna be a meat shield for him.
I think she would have been more like, I will wade into the battle fray, and if you hit me with an arrow, I will come and knock your block off.
Probably. I mean, obviously, talking about Fiona in like meta context, absolutely, she probably would have done that. But and this is probably going to be the only time I genuinely ask this in terms of like a meta or a player knowledge. Do you think the player would have done that?
Do I think what?
Do you think the player herself would have actually gone through with the whole, you hit me with that arrow, I'm going to knock your block off?
At that point in the campaign, yeah. You know, I think she would have. I think she would have started to really kind of grow into the character and start to, appreciate, appreciate that, you're playing someone who doesn't necessarily think or behave as you necessarily would.
Mm-hmm.
The whole role playing aspect of it, and I think she would have really started to enjoy that. And yeah, I think she would have definitely, walked into battle with a freaking great axe and chopped up, goblins into small, tiny, quivering bits, and then, if she got plucked in the shoulder with an arrow, would have turned around and cleaved Lark in half.
All right, so
without too much compulsion either, because she's like, you know what, you're an asshole anyway.
So how about the dream? That dream of a burning Albright and the three of you finding a Death Knight.
I think the player would have been pissed.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I think she would have been. She's like, really? Freaking dream sequence? I can imagine her saying that, right? But and I have to admit, even playing Roland, I saw the Death Knight, and I'm like, I'm fairly certain that Roland would have been scared out of his mind, and then oh my god, the barbarian had to go and rage and attack, and I'm just like, you are a freaking idiot. But hey, you know what? New campaign, maybe.
Now, obviously, if she were there, we would have had 4 instead of 3, so we could have continued the actual campaign proper instead, or at the very least, more likely have done that. Obviously, but I'm glad I remembered to ask that question. I'm glad I remembered to ask that question, because that was the one thing that was just so different to everything else we've done so far. And like it was the one section that at the time had 0 consequences to anything you fucking did,
except for the
mental and physical scars that are
right.
the result of a Death Knight kicking you about 80 feet away.
Yep. And I think it really did bring to the players' attention themselves that you can't just necessarily waltz up and attack everything that you come across, because sometimes someone's going to freaking drop kick you across a freaking cathedral, and that's going to be it for everyone. So, yes, it did essentially end up as a TPK.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. I think the fact that it was a dream sequence, thank God.
You're welcome.
Right. Just decided to, didn't have any actual real consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So obviously the player you think would have been like super fucking pissed. If you could separate the player from the character with how fresh she was, how do you think Fiona would have acted to the dream sequence?
Fiona would have freaked out. Because she definitely would not have experienced anything like that yet, because like I said, she's a fighter, she's not a druid. Druids are much more in tune with nature, and in tune with the subtle energies necessary to manipulate and use magic,
Mm-hmm.
right? So by the very nature, something like that would allow, um, not allow, but would require some amount of control over one's dreams and other uh, mental states of being, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so Roland would have been a little more practiced with something along those lines, because getting in contact with nature spirits and stuff like that, kind of like that episode in Avatar, the Last Airbender, where he goes into the spirit world to um, to deal with that
Mm-hmm.
with the Heibai spirit and
Do they have
and
bathrooms in the spirit realm? As a matter of fact, they do not.
right. But so I mean, in that aspect, he would have realized exactly what had happened, what was going on after the fact,
Yeah.
obviously, because that totally passed us up the first time, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, but Fiona would have been freaked out.
All
There's no
right.
question about that.
So let's see. Moving along a bit, because I'm going to try to get a bit further along in the campaign that we've done, going through memory lane. What do you think she would have? How do you think she would have felt for the that fight in the dwarven mine with the Gorn's hands taking the women hostages, or a bit more
Yeah,
colorful than hostages? Let's just say that.
yeah, no, right. Uh, Goblin Slayer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um. Um.
I wanted to establish how monstrous they were, and
Yes. Yeah. And
there are
you
very
did.
few
You
things more
did very
monstrous than
effectively.
that.
Yes. Um. I think she would have absolutely gone berserk. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there would have been, yes. She would have had probably one goblin on each of the prongs of her trident, and probably
Mm-hmm. And do you think
so.
that?
I remember recalling what happened at the end of that particular session.
Yep, one of the players
Um,
called the bluffs of the goblin, and
yep, and
it
turns out he wasn't bluffing.
was not a bluff.
Ugh. Yeah. So I'm fairly certain that, well, if she was playing the character like the character was, the character she probably would have turned on him.
You think?
Or at least, or she probably would have been angry enough for it. I think so.
Hmm.
And in all honesty, uh, Roland was almost at that edge himself. You know,
In all fairness,
so
though, Tiberius may or may not have put a very poorly done bear hide over you.
yeah, so he didn't like him in the first place, and I'm fairly certain that Fiona would not have liked him either, because I mean, let's be honest here, the people that your friends don't like, you generally, at least initially, end up not liking anyway.
This is true.
So,
You've got that low level of peer pressure when it comes to people your friends are friends with, or friends or enemies with.
and if your friends or family are, friends with a person or dislike a person, you are commensurately more inclined or less inclined to give them slack.
That's true. And do you think it would have affected her supposed relationship with de Grisniak after seeing such a sight? Like, because I remember Roland was kind of re-sparked in that sense, like after seeing all this stuff and de Grisniak still being there. Like, even now, I imagine is a little, character-wise, is a little strange.
Yeah, yeah, and even now, Roland is a little bit cool towards De Grisniak. He's so, I mean, he can appreciate that he's not quite as goblin-esque as your average goblin,
Yeah.
but he is
He's
still
almost waiting for it
a
to
goblin.
happen.
Not that he's waiting for it to happen, but um, it, even if you can respect a person's intelligence, the there are still residual effects of what happened to his parents when he was a child,
Oh, of course.
that are still affecting his, affecting that. So,
Oh,
and
of
he is
course.
rather curious. He's also a fairly curious person by nature. So, he's also curious to meet his daughter.
That's fair.
But he is seeing him more and more as a person rather than just as um, a goblin. So I'm certain Fiona would not have had as much of an issue beginning to trust him, because she would have seen his prowess as a fighter, and that he did actually help the group out when it was not necessarily immediately in his best interest.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows a slight bit of altruism and the ability to put oneself, or to put others, before oneself, which is, um, you know, one of the critical aspects of trust.
And actually, going back to what you were talking about before, when it came to like parents all of a sudden no longer having children in the house anymore, I like to think that if we had, like, if I, with my experience, gone back and remembered how young Fiona was, I like to think that I would have given de Grisniak an almost fatherly affection towards Fiona, given the fact that she's like, what was she, like 19, something like that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so she was still fairly young, and he's like in his like 40s or 50s this at this point, and like kind of all not necessarily seeing his daughter in her, but recognizing a younger woman,
Yeah, or just
like,
the fact that she is someone's daughter.
yeah, separated from her parents and whatnot. I like to think that he would have shown a far more uh, apparent sense of fatherly protection for her. I like to
Mm-hmm.
think that I would have, like, for instance, had she been injured at all, he would have gone over and like given her a health potion. He's like, "Oh, here, heal up." If
Yeah.
someone else is all like, "Oh, we need healing." Talk to the druid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that. Yes.
because yeah, like, I realize that you need to crawl before you can walk, of course. But I when I think back about all the stuff that not only that the players missed out on, but I myself also missed out on just because of a lack of experience, I kind of I do reminisce about what I could have done, and the
Well, just
the different
chalk up to
relations.
Wizard for your next campaign.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
I
the
mean,
different
once you finish
relations.
this one 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, of
Yeah.
course, absolutely. But moving on to the city of the Dragonborn. How do you think she would have responded to Valcoria, the leader of this city?
Rosaria?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Valcoria Vale.
Yeah. The Tsar.
Mm-hmm.
The Tsar. Of course, the Tsar does kind of imply a rather larger ownership of land than a mere city. But yeah.
I describe it
I,
as a
I
city
think
because
she would have.
I don't
Yeah.
know what else to call the providence.
Right. The she would. Yeah. I think she would have liked her. Honestly.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I think they would have. They would have had some fairly similar, philosophical viewpoints. You know, having grown up in the, uh, having grown up in a cold climate, um, there is a simultaneous pride of a person's ability to uh, endure and survive and thrive in such an adverse environment, combined with a bit of a sense of community with helping people up, because if you don't, they're going to die,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this lends a rather interesting perspective on what a person would, if a person that would perceive weakness, you know, and how one how one does respond to it. So she would have seen her as a powerful warrior and as a powerful person in and of herself. Um, and Valkyria, while she is fairly politic, does have a bit of at least that at least in my impression, that she does have a bit of the disdain for weakness, which seems to be a fairly common thing in this particular town.
When it comes to Valkyria, little bit of meta knowledge here. It's not necessarily a matter of like a disdain for weakness so much as a disdain for indecisiveness.
Mm.
It's more of a disdain for indecisiveness, and obviously when you're a ruler you have a thing against disloyalty, so that's not exactly a here nor there thing for her. Mm-hmm. But it's mostly a disdain for indecisiveness, for lying and stuff like that. Like if you yourself are like, if you're physically weak but you still take the time to learn, say, strategy, you've still got your strengths in tactics or battlefield organization and stuff like that. But if you're indecisive about what you want and you just don't do it, that's the thing that she doesn't really like.
Yeah.
And obviously she's basically a single mother to a rapscallion.
Yeah.
So she kind of has to put on airs, like especially when it comes to keeping her in line.
Well, and I do think that Fiona would have responded to that kind of attitude very well.
And what about Zavanna, the little rapscallion? How do you think Fiona would have responded to her?
I think they would have been best friends. I honestly do, because the player herself would have loved the character.
Yeah, and Zavanna, the orphan ringleader.
Yeah, and she, Fiona probably would have been an instigator.
Mm-hmm.
She would have been the one that would be like, "Hey, I bet if you go grab that cat's tail, it'd be really funny." I could easily see her doing that.
Oh man,
yeah,
I can totally see that now too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know that Matt plays his plays Kalu, his half orc, as a very
juvenile way.
No, not juvenile, but like terse, if you will. He's very quiet.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about when he does role play Kalu as like in a more like active as opposed to passive.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my mind was going.
Mm-hmm. And there's a little bit of there's a little bit of puckishness, if you will, in Kalu. There's no question about that. But I think a lot of that, might stem from the fact that he's trying to find a little bit of enjoyment in life because despite all the tragedy.
Yeah.
So. Plus, there's the fact that some of the players around him just do like crazy things.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Like let's just like everyone steal from each other. Jeez.
How do you think Fiona would have responded to that? Players stealing from each other.
If she even took note of it, she probably would have laughed her guts out.
That'll do.
I don't think she would have participated, but I think she probably would have thought it was funny. Just because, in all honesty, that particular situation was a hilarious.
It was a riot.
Yes.
A laugh riot. How about we'll do two more?
Yeah, I'm going to steal from you, and then I'm going to steal from you.
We'll do two more characters from Stormwind, and then we'll move on to other instances. What do you think she would have felt like for Orion or let's say Titania? For those two characters. Because obviously Orion's a bigger deal in the grander scheme, but Titania was also Titania had a bit of an impact on Roland specifically, didn't she?
Wow, I'm having an absolute brain fart. Titania.
The White Dragonborn, the guard.
The
one that you left to die at the gate.
Well, he was trying to solve the problem, not just put out brush fires, which is what his mentality was why, because he figured, hey, we'll take out the source of this, and then if she can survive until then he will have, in an offhand sort of way, saved her, because
If she survived that long.
yes.
Did I tell you about what would have happened had you joined her at the gate?
You told us that there would have been a financial reward. But you didn't tell us.
Yeah, there would have been a financial reward. Obviously, there would have been some experience points gained. You would have also gained Titania as a traveling companion throughout the entire rest of that entire invasion of sorts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so if you had gone at that point, had you gone anywhere inside the city, you would have met Degrizniak in one area, obviously, because his was left very ambiguous as to where he was in the city. Mm-hmm. I always knew that you were going to fight at least one area, and then, if you went by a well, you'd go and fight by the well. But if you went inside the city, you would find Degrizniak, of course, and you would fight together, and he would join you, and that would make it easier from that point on.
Yeah.
The only location where you would be fighting and you wouldn't gain anything was the well.
Okay.
Now, yeah.
And of course, it's the one place that we actually showed up at. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you went by the gate, you would have fought about 8 undead gnolls. Mm-hmm. Maybe 12, and they themselves weren't all that difficult to take down. They were just a lot of them.
Yeah, it's just the swarm concept. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So and, had you beaten them, you would have gained 50.
The question is the concept of simultaneity, if you will, right? And I guess as a player, I didn't realize that this is what you were, what was foremost in Roland's mind was all the innocent people that were dying because of what was going on here. And the longer that it takes us to eliminate the origin and the source of the undead, then the more innocent people are going to die. So that was his main concern was for the city as a whole, not necessarily for locations in particular. So
yeah. And I get that. I think that stems more from Roland's upbringing rather than an understanding of the city. Because the city is a very take care of yourself town. Mm-hmm. In the sense that, pretty much everyone has a fight in them. You know? Had you fought by the gates, you would have gained, I believe it was 50 gold.
And your average cook is not necessarily going to have a whole lot of experience fighting, and will be in much more danger. So his goal, like I said, was to save the most amount of people as best as he could. So
yeah, don't worry, I get you. I understand.
Yeah.
So had you fought by the gates, each player would have gained 50 gold pieces per guard that survived. So at the very least 50, because Titania, with the party's help, was not going to go down.
Yeah.
So each player was going to gain at least 50 gold, plus Titania for the rest of the invasion. And had you gone to the point after that was that you were also going to find the orphans around that area. And so had you met them, what's the next best place to go to in order that they don't, all die? The Silver Bear Guild. So had you gone over there, you would have fought, I forget exactly what it was, sword wraiths. You would have fought sword wraiths and I think a sword wraith commander. And you would have fought alongside Orion and Valkyria Vale.
Mm-hmm.
And
which would have been cool.
Oh, it would have been amazing. And had you survived that, I forget exactly what I had set for the reward, but whether or not she actually needed saving at the time, the very fact that you not only went to her aid, but also saved the orphans, which her daughter was among, by the way, that would have gone a long way. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you also would have gotten Orion and Valkyria in the party and joining you for pretty much everything. And I feel like at that point, y'all would have spent a lot more time at the well. Just when you realized, oh, they just keep on spawning back up. Let's farm for about 20 minutes real quick. Let's metagame real quick. Let's just kill about 20 zombies, 30 skeletons, and about 5 of these whites. Let's just kill all of these real quick, level up twice, and then we can keep going.
Right.
Because at that point, you would have had a level 17 ranger, a level 14 sorcerer, and a level 12 fighter, plus Degrizniak on your team if you had met Degrizniak at that point. Y'all would have been fine.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you would have encountered the gnome who was possessed by the ghost of her dead mother.
Right. Well, and you know, Roland as a character isn't all that interested in renown, right? He doesn't really care, you know, if he gains fame or anything like that. He just wants to, you know, he's a druid.
Yeah.
Right. Their main concern is nature and fame or infamy in the circles of humanoid civilization really doesn't have a whole lot of interest in them, except perhaps in and of the fact that, you know, if a larger job is needed, they could call on royalty, you know, in case, you know, as necessary.
Yeah.
So
how about the Titania and Orion for Fiona? How do you think she would have responded to those?
Titania and well, Orion, I think she wouldn't have liked.
No,
because he's a bit full of himself.
I can't imagine why.
Right? Yeah, he's pretty full of himself, and he's a bit of a dick. So I don't think she would have liked him all that much. Titania, I suppose it would depend on how Roland and Titania had rolled out in that case.
Mm-hmm.
Because Roland, you know, when he saw Titania, he was kind of like, oh, hey, you know. So
Titania, the aliens space marine. I mean, well, that's how
she was a white dragonborn, right?
She was, yes.
Yeah, and which means that they, you know, at a particular level, well, no, starting out, they have resistance to cold, right? And so, you know, so I mean, as a player, I'm thinking, you know, this character would be great, an excellent traveling companion, because I could set off all my cold spells around her, and they're not going to deal her too much damage, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and then, you know, as a character, as you know, Roland himself rather, you know, found her an agreeable specimen, if you will. So,
I wonder if the Book of Erotic Fantasy details how a half-elf and a dragonborn can procreate.
Probably.
It would probably take a lot more of the dragonborn than the human or the elf part. I feel like the dragonborn part is the dominant gene.
Oh, and then here's the other question though is each different species, if you will, does have different cues to indicate readiness for procreation, if you will, right?
Uh-huh.
And you know, as a player, I do wonder, you know, if some of those signals get crossed in the different races, you know.
I can understand that, and I feel like we could talk about that for a long time.
Well, we could, but that's not why we're in this particular conversation anyway.
Of course. But. So Titania was a bit more of a toss-up to how big Uncle would take her, and Orion is kind of a dick. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
How about I think the next part after the after that, because the Krothiks were an easy enough answer. She just fucking smashed the bugs.
Yeah.
What
well,
about?
And then don't forget the that Knoll Lord thing that we fought. I mean that was one hell of a fight. And
she would have made it easier. She would have made it a lot easier.
Absolutely. And what was the challenge rating on that thing anyway?
I forget. I do know that the thing could attack 3 times per round. It had a decent armor class and it had reach, so it's definitely in the high end area. I do think that it was. I'm fairly certain it was above Deadly Encounter in points, but because it was 1 on fucking 5 at the time.
It was Roland, Jorno, Kalu, Grisniak, and I think that was it. I don't think Luke was there. I don't think Lark was there at the time. Lark was gone by then, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, because the session before that, Lark's replacement character, the Tabaxi, was around, but right. Kalu wasn't there. And then the session after that, the Tabaxi was gone and Kalu was there.
Right.
So yeah. So there's.
I tell you what, though, we got some. I mean, we got some phenomenal loot out of trading that whip in.
Oh, absolutely. So let's see. What do you think her reaction would have been to those temples? You know, the temple in the mountain and then the temple in the city.
Well, I will say this. If Fiona was there, I'm fairly certain that she would not have let Roland go wandering off with a freaking blind resurrected elf. Mm-hmm. So there's that, and I'm fairly certain that once
it became a 2-on-1 fight between you two and him, yeah, it would have gone a vastly different way.
Yeah,
I do still think that ultimately he would have prevailed, but it would have taken a lot longer, and you guys would have had a lot more opportunities to get the fuck out or to run away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at some point, if you did manage to get away long enough, he would have broke off pursuit.
Right. Well,
it would have been a pretty badass thing. It would have been a pretty badass fight.
Phenomenal fight.
The two daughters of Sha. What was her name again?
Shaltha.
Yeah, the two children of Shaltha going up against her long now dead friend.
Yep.
Family squabble. Family squabble.
Yeah. Right. Could you imagine that letter home?
Yeah.
Sorry,
hey.
Just want to let you know.
Hey, your friend tried to kill us, so we put him in the ground.
Yeah. Right. Yeesh.
So.
That would definitely have been an interesting. See now.
That she probably would have a sense of urgency actually if it did end up that he still took your eye.
Yeah,
I think she would have been more interested in catching his sorry ass than you are.
Probably. I mean, Roland has realized that he is just a pawn in the larger game. I'm sorry, that Arfeld is just a pawn in the larger game, but he's still not going to let his actions go, without consequence. So,
yeah.
But it's not quite so personal for him as it is. This is a mess that I need to help clean up. So, yeah.
Well, moving right along then.
What would have been interesting would be
real quick.
If Fiona reacted to see how Fiona reacted to
Morgan?
Alvin.
Hmm.
I'm fairly certain that she probably would not have had too much. She wouldn't have put up with as much of his crap.
Probably not. Probably not. I think she would have had a pretty good time with Morgan, though. I think those two would have hit it off quite well.
Yes.
in terms of characters.
I agree. Yes, I think they would have.
It's difficult to say how the two of them would react because they're both such. I don't want to say non-entities in the sense that they don't exist, but non-entities in the fact that once we've gotten to this point, we're just guessing as to how Fiona would have responded to pretty much everything. And Fiona was only there for so long, too, so...
Right.
Sorry, not Fiona. Morgan was only there for so long.
Well, she was there for a good... Oh, God. It was a good at least...
It was at least a month. It was at least a month's worth of time in real time.
At least a good half a dozen episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And, you could still have her... her mother or her aunt as an NPC and a foe that we could face off against.
I've given some thought to it, and I'm racking my brain. It's something that I could do. I need to be really careful with it though, so I have to. Before I bring her back into this thing, I need to. First off, I need to find an actual logical method to bring her in.
Well, she's searching for her niece, isn't she?
She is, but she's not with you guys anymore.
No.
So she would have.
But we had contact with her, so all she would have to do was.
But who knows that other than you guys?
Stormwind and all she would have to do was wander to Stormwind and ask around, and eventually she would have said, "Oh," she probably would have heard someone say, "Oh yeah, no, we saw her hanging out with these guys."
Again, it's possible, but we're also not taking into account that she never left Stormwind with you guys, so she was probably last seen with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she would have found Alvin amusing after a while. Like, I think she just would have needed to get used to him, kind of like how you guys have. Where I feel like Roland only has the feelings that he does towards Alvin because you are the only one who's truly aware of the gravity of what's going on.
Yeah.
I think that's not the main reason, but one of the bigger reasons why you're not quite putting up with his bullshit. I feel like if it weren't
Alvin
I feel like if it wasn't
has no idea.
Yeah, I feel like if it weren't so world threatening, I feel like you would have been all like, very funny. And you would, I feel like at some point you would have gone like, okay, could you just not do that for like a week? Then we can keep going.
Right.
But I feel like Alvin would have been good after a while. I think Morgan would have been a smash hit from the get-go.
Yeah.
I think she would have been... How the hell do you think she would have handled Kalu going revenge in that hour-and-a-half long struggle?
Oh, God.
It wasn't his fault.
No, it was my fault.
Yeah. Well, he is the one that picked up that sword of vengeance, so...
He didn't know it was a sword of vengeance.
No, but, I mean,
I had him attuned to it before I told him.
Well, it was his own choice to decide to attune to a sword that he had no idea what it really actually did.
Say what, Dead Mike?
Like in Indiana Jones, when you're in a temple, don't pick the big shiny thing up until you know what it is.
Well, he knew what it was.
Exactly.
He knew what it was.
A sword, yeah.
No, he just didn't know. No, Indiana knew what it was. He just didn't guess the weight. He got the weight wrong.
Same concept when they make the references to any of that. Don't touch anything.
Oh, so it's the Cave of Wonders now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
You have touched
the forbidden treasure. Yeah, I feel like, knowing her as I do, I get the feeling that she would have been more along the lines of Morgan, in the sense that she would not have wanted to take Kalu down, but the moment it looked like he was going back to it, she probably would have just shanked him.
Well,
I like to think she probably would have done that.
They would have had relatively equivalent strengths, though.
Oh, absolutely. So, I think they're like, wait, wasn't they like 1 point apart in strength?
I think she was 17 and I think he was 18. I think that's what it was. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure she probably would have put that additional point.
And by that point in time, she would have passed level 4, so she could have had the opportunity to increase her strength again. So by
that point, you kind of cut out there.
Sorry. So, but by that point in the campaign, she would have passed level 4. So she would have had the opportunity to level up one more time in regards to like her strength, which I think she would have done.
She could have had equivalent strength at that point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. She probably would have tried to grapple him because she would of anyone in the party she would have had the
the best chance.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
I mean, Roland has a strength of 10. Elvin, I think Elvin has a strength of like 11.
I think he's got 12 actually. I think he's got 12 strength.
Either way, but it's not. It's nowhere near an 18.
Yeah.
And of course, how
Morgan had 5. Morgan had a 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I'm actually.
I'm gonna
speaking.
I'm gonna help.
We'll get to the. we'll get to the Morgan episode at another time. But I'm honestly a little peeved when Morgan decided to, I don't want these potions of fire giant strength. I want to go invisible. And I'm like, motherfucker, you had 5 strength. I gave you an out to give you like 24. What do you want from me?
Right. Well,
like literally turn your worst stat into your best for like an hour.
Well, yeah, but in all honesty, like, the ability to go invisible, even if only once, as a sorcerer, coming from,
experience,
someone who someone who has a sorcerer that can go invisible, and just the fact that you can like sneak up behind someone and just fireball them out of nowhere. Yeah, no, that as invisibility is a much more useful talent for a sorcerer than it is for large amounts of strength, to be honest. So.
It was more in the idea that I wanted to show Morgan, hey, just because your strength is 5 doesn't mean that that's the end. There are plenty of items out there. There are plenty of items out there.
Like a belt of giant strength. That would have been funny.
It could have been funny. Yeah, I just didn't. The idea for those was that they needed to be consumable.
Right.
Like
it's a one-off thing.
Yeah, I genuinely thought about that actually, but then I remembered my imposed rules. Like, okay, I can't actually do this, otherwise, it's woefully unfair to have one player with something that's constant and everyone else has to consume something.
Right.
Regardless of how new the player was,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But, see, my question that I'm kind of curious about is if Maddie had ever decided to join us on one of our evil campaigns, what kind of a character she would have made?
That's a question I was going to ask at a later point. Like, I genuinely believe the main reason why she isn't here right now is because I didn't think of the villain campaign idea until after she was already gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't help but wonder, like, what would happen if we, if I had the idea for the villain campaign, before she left, whether she would even have interest in the villain campaign.
Yeah. She may have.
Yeah.
Well, probably would have, especially if she kept showing up when other people didn't.
Right. Absolutely. Can you imagine the fucking Ghost Rangers with you and everyone else, and then Fiona's character. Fiona's player. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm fairly certain that she might have gone caster in the villain campaign.
I think she might have actually gone assassin. I think she would have taken oh, we're evil? We are a ghost squadron that takes in traitors? I want to be the murderer.
Yeah, I can see that.
I can totally see her being all like, okay, what's the best class for murder? Rogue.
Yep.
Like, I can be a level 10 rogue? Yes.
I'm going to learn how to sneak. We're going to sneak. Be really sneaky.
Very, very sneaky. I don't think we could possibly ascertain what kind of race she would pick. I think that's too numerous to really count. Mm-hmm. It would have been really interesting to see her play as like a Dragonborn though, or a Tiefling.
A Tiefling rogue, Tiefling assassin. That would have been that would definitely been interesting.
Talk about stereotypes.
Yeah. At any rate, it is getting a bit late.
Indeed. So we'll wrap this. So we'll try to run through this as quickly as possible. How late can you go?
I should have been gone 40 minutes ago. I got to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. Can you last until 10?
It is now 10:41.
You didn't turn your clock back, did you?
I didn't?
You didn't turn your clock back?
Well, I've got so many clocks I need to. Okay. Well.
Yeah, it's 9:41 actually.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I could probably last until 10.
All right. So until 10, that means we...
Shut up, Zach!
I'm impressed that you can hear him from that far away. This mic is good. This mic is really good. So let's see. What do you think she would have... how do you think she would have responded to, say, Schreiertown and the Hunter's Hall location-wise? Because obviously Schreiertown was like a 1 or 2 episode pit stop, obviously, but the characters in there were kind of like very hobbity, very lively. How do you think she would have responded to those?
Okay, there we go. Why doesn't that do it automatically? All right. Sorry, changing my time. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't notice that up until now. Anyhow, I think she would have liked Schreiertown. I think the character would have liked Schreiertown.
I tend to agree. I get the feeling that she would have found all of them to be like charming. I feel like they would have. I feel like she would have found them really charming,
relaxing, because I think she would have been very. The denizens of that place are very non-threatening, which is something that as an adventurer you could appreciate.
Oh, absolutely.
One of the things that a lot of writers forget to take into account, especially ones that write like fantasy stuff, and so many of their characters just have like one shitty situation happen after another, and they keep getting dumped into these just nasty situations and impossible, against impossible odds. And in all honesty, your average person, put into that situation is going to be
not going to survive that. Like mentally checked out.
Yeah. Because I mean, as a player, you're thinking, okay, so we should have the ability to overcome the situation, but not many actual people necessarily think in that fashion, right? Or there are a lot of people that don't. So I mean, so yes, like when you are in an adventure, any kind of downtime that you have afford, I mean, as a player, it might be a little bit boring, but I know that the characters really do appreciate it because, you can't be running on adrenaline all the time.
Oh yeah, of course not.
Yep. Yeah. So see, I think she either would have found it rather relaxing, or she would have just been bored out of her skull.
I like to think that she would have found it relaxing, especially with Alvin's family. I feel like I get the feeling that I get the feeling that if she stuck around and fought the monsters that you guys all fought and lived with the families that you've seen up to this point, I get the feeling that she would have found Alvin's family to be a breath of fresh air and quite humorous.
Yes.
I get the feeling she would have liked them. I am not convinced that she would have liked Abelock, Rawl, and Blood Loon Drowning.
Probably not.
And this is us jumping to the Hunter's Hall.
Yeah, she probably would have gotten pissed off pretty quick. Mm-hmm. I think she would have found. Oh, come on! Who's the brother that runs the place?
The brother that runs the... Well, we're talking...
The half elf that runs the place.
Halanos.
Helenos.
Helenos
Thank you.
Willow.
I'm sorry. It's getting late, so my brain's getting a little bit fried.
No,
But,
I get you.
yeah.
I get you.
Yeah, Helenos. I think she might have found him a little bit irritating.
Oh yeah.
Well, because and more because of his tendency to like kind of jump from one thing to another.
Ah.
You know.
Okay, I get you.
She probably would have liked his sister though.
Ceres.
Yes.
I think she would have found her fascinating.
Yeah, Ceres is a badass.
She's got no legs and no arms, but she knows what you're thinking before you can think it.
Yeah. Yep.
And she may or may not have the power to back it up. We don't know yet.
Right. I'm still kind of eager to see what her, because I still hold to the fact that she probably has some kind of a handmaiden or something like that to help her with some of her everyday functions, like eating.
Yeah.
And what comes after eating. So.
Yeah, it's called Mage Hand.
Yes.
It's called Unseen Servant.
Yeah, there's that too, right? Mage Hand.
Like, strangely enough, strangely enough, I took, unintentionally it may be, I may or may not, you could argue that I legitimately took your idea of the fucking mute and blind wizard and just took it to its next logical conclusion. Bitch has no legs now.
Yeah. Well, my concept was simply to have one that didn't speak.
Yeah.
And then would use his sorcerer abilities to, or his the silent spell sorcerer power to cast all of his spells. And that's mainly because I read about something similar to that in a book, and I thought the character was pretty badass. But yeah. Anyhow, but yeah, no, it's and there are quite a few things, even in mythical tales, that talk. I mean, even just look at Odin, right?
Yeah.
That talks about a person who gives up their sight or gives up an eye, gets insight into other things. Yeah. Well, into like deeper spiritual matters and things like that.
Daredevil.
So, well, I was thinking like more along the lines of like Odin.
Well, I know. I just
then,
the common joke for her, the common joke for Daredevil is he's a blind guy with the power to see.
Right, and that's it, and acrobatic skills, which is his big power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, he's just physically skilled with acrobatics, and if I remember correctly, the actual comics go into detail explaining that this isn't some supernatural power he's got. It's just that literally all of his other senses are heightened, and even then, he still had to learn how to focus them.
Well, and that is a known phenomenon, actually.
There are blind people who can walk around with fucking sonar.
Yeah. Yep.
Riding bicycles and stuff like that.
Yep. Well, it's not quite sonar, but you get you learn to use sound to evaluate your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then of course your memory of where things are also tends to be heightened.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes.
So, what do you think her... I'm sorry, I'm speeding things up, but we only got 10 more minutes before you can go to bed.
I appreciate it, yes.
What do you think, knowing what you believe you know about the Enigma Knight Rawl and his two compatriots, Abelock, the human with a fucking beak, and Bloodloon Drowning, an old tabaxi, what do you think she would feel about those three? And what do you think she would feel about Omen? I realized as soon as I was done asking that prior question, I did not ask to think about Omen. How do you think she would respond to the only cleric in the party?
I think that the character would have been like, well, it's about time that we got someone who has a more dedicated healer.
Right.
I think she would be. I mean, she would appreciate his presence in the party, but I do think that she would she would still be a little suspicious of him.
Oh yeah.
Yes, because she probably would have noticed some of the weird things that he's been doing, like, you know, um, collecting and selling corpses, for example.
Hey,
Or
you gotta make a living somehow.
oh yeah, no, I understand, but it's just that a lot of the stuff that he's done is so far outside of Roland's purview of normal behavior that he wouldn't even think about some of the that anyone could do some of the stuff that he's been doing. So he hasn't thought to look for it yet. And then it would have been interesting to see how Fiona reacted to Kalu, because I think it would have to be based on that on her reaction to Kalu, on how she would have reacted to Omen, especially how Omen decided to basically set himself up as Kalu's god. So yeah, if she thought he was being deceitful, she probably would have been fairly pissed. It's character dynamics are a very interesting topic in and of themselves. So I think with Omen, it could have gone either way, but I don't think she would have ever been ambivalent to him. I think she would been impressed and thought he was cool, or she would have just hated his guts.
Okay.
So
I can see that happening. And what about the other three as the last topics of the stream?
I haven't put much thought into them myself as a player.
So
because Roland hasn't had much interaction with them as it is. The only one who's really had a lot of interaction was Alvin, and Roland did see Alvin play his little joke on them, so he's not surprised at all about the reaction that Alvin got.
May or may not have tried to poison their leader.
Right, and
with vertigo poisoning.
Right, and Roland has been not necessarily of any vicious practical jokes, but he has been the target of practical jokes from Alvin before. So so the reaction that they had was completely understandable from his perspective. He is quite impressed with the knight. He's not quite sure where his power comes from. He's got an idea. Mm-hmm. Or some theories, but no real actual proof. He can respect strength.
I mean, you know me. I won't confirm or deny your suspicions about Rawl, but for the sake of the stream, what do you think is going on with him?
I think he's like a warrior warlock combo, personally. Maybe with a little bit of monk thrown in there with the speed that he got, because. So, Roland is quite aware that he is being heavily influenced from the Raven Queen. So, and seeing as Roland's, the majority of Roland's experience with gods are those that deal with nature rather than arcane.
Yeah.
She's someone that I would be willing to bet. I haven't rolled for it, but I would be willing to bet she's someone that he's heard of, but doesn't know too much about. For example, I as a person, I have heard of the Celtic war goddess Andraste, right? But I don't know a lot about her off the top of my head.
I get you. Get you. So, and this is just my curiosity, because why do you think a warlock and not, say, paladin? I mean, paladins have been known to have their gods.
Well, that is true, but
I'm just kind of interested as to.
It's the chains.
This is true. This is true. I did describe chains.
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, he could be a paladin warlock. So like he had paladin's abilities, and the god said, you know what, I'd like to tighten my binding to you a little bit. So I mean that is a possibility, but um a a dark paladin, while not unheard of, is not exactly what you think of when you think of paladin in the first place. When you think of paladin, you think of gods of light, champion of the gods of light. Usually, when you think of servants of darkness and of evil, you think of evil clerics or evil or warlocks or or evil wizards. Servants of arcane and power.
I get you.
So I mean, I could definitely see a paladin of the of the Raven Queen would be an interesting concept. But yeah, no, that's not necessarily the first thing that comes to mind when someone sees chains. Because yeah, you mentioned she's chains binding the two together, and the first thing that popped in my head literally was Pact of the Chain. So, but then of course, yes, a warlock doesn't necessarily have access to the to plate mail. So
this is true. But yeah, I do like throwing those little nuggets of information your way. Like the other players either don't have as much experience to make those like player calls, or in Omen's case, it doesn't have anything to do with me. Okay, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah,
kind of like Tiberius.
Yeah. So
he's not quite that bad. At least he does pay attention. But yes, no, I've come to realize that small little details can come back to bite us later in the campaign. So
yeah, I try to keep that to a minimum because I don't want you to overanalyze everything. But
you take half the fun out of this, man. Come on.
All right then. I guess I'm going for it. Like, you're the one who wanted me to create an NPC y'all can't fucking defeat. Now you want me to start implementing a pay attention or you die rule.
Not quite that severe, but you can. It is interesting to have small things that are I wouldn't, if not glossed over, then mentioned in a very small fashion earlier in the campaign, and then all of a sudden it becomes a big deal later. Well, like for example, the potato girl in
Fool's Gold, yeah.
Dingo Doodles, yes, yeah, that's yeah. Here, have a potato. Here, I'm going to poison this potato and grow more poison potatoes and poison the entire monarchy of this kingdom, then take over. Yeah.
It was a bit more complicated than that, but I get your point.
You'll learn that you have consequences.
And in my own defense, I have done stuff like that.
Yes.
I have done stuff like that. They just haven't come to full fruition yet.
Right.
Well, I think a couple of them have, but I don't. The big ones haven't. That's for damn sure.
Well, I'm just I got to be honest. I'm just really curious as to who the Harbinger really serves.
The Harbinger?
The Herald. Sorry, the Herald.
Ah, the Herald. Okay.
Because when you are a herald of something greater than you, and he shows he has proven to be quite powerful himself. So it will be quite interesting to see what to see what he serves.
Yeah.
So
I do hope that depending on how things go in the forest, that'll actually come a lot faster than you think. What I have so far, there might be one more region before that.
Okay.
But again, depending on how things go down in the forest, it actually might come a bit faster than that. because I realized after a certain point that I'm just kind of thinking, obviously the most recent two players don't have this in any capacity, but the other two players might at some point experience what I experienced with my character in the Star Wars campaign. You guys might suffer character burnout, and I really don't want that to happen. So
Mm-hmm.
so as soon as I remembered that, I thought, all right, I got to speed this up in such a method that it's still believable and not forced.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they still have to finish a couple things. So let's see if we can't get the dragons forced very precise, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully the stuff that happens in the next region will be. Hopefully, I'll be able to actually interweave the next region with that, and we'll come to the grand finale.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
But in any case,
it should be interesting. It should be interesting.
I hope so. So, final thoughts. What do you think of the character model in Hero Forge for Fiona?
I like it. I think it's not quite what I pictured, but I think it's quite well done. And yes, I could definitely see that as Fiona.
Would you have any recommendations as someone who actually more or less envisioned the two characters of Roland and Fiona? Do you have any suggestions of what you think might be different?
As far as
design-wise or pose-wise, because at the very end of this, I'm going to let you know, these lost players, if I have my way, will be gifts to said players. I've actually I've already contacted Fiona's player, and she would actually be quite down for a mini of Fiona. So as soon as I got that confirmation, I was like, okay, right then I can go and I'm gonna design these with these episodes, and at the end of it all, once I've got enough money, I'll order them, I'll paint them, and I will send them out.
Mm.
Yes, even to the players I hate now.
Hey, why not, right?
But yeah, so Fiona is the first. So off the top of your head, do you have any recommendations or suggestions to maybe tweak things up a bit?
No, that looks pretty good. I think she's for Fiona. Yeah, no, that's pretty good. With Roland, now that they allow you to have like pets with you,
mm-hmm.
It would be. I think it would be great if he had a wolf with him.
Unfortunately, Hero Forge only allows foxes and cats. The wolf is a mount, hence why the epilogue is a mounted form.
Mm-hmm. That would be cool. And I can't wait until Roland's pup gets to be full size and can actually participate in combat and stuff like that. That'll be awesome.
If you can find him.
Yep, working on it.
I am honestly so glad you did not catch what Saris was talking about. I am so glad, because if you realized right then and there, it would have been so much pain for me. It would have been such a pain in the ass for me if you realized at that moment. But we are good, and thank you for joining me.
Well, this was fun. We should do this. We'll do this again.
I don't know if I'll be doing this next Sunday, but I do plan on making this happen a number of times. I'm thinking I'll do this for if I remember correctly, it is Boo Boo the Jolly and Osiris, because I want to do this in more chronological order to when they departed. And if I remember correctly, those two had one more session after Fiona's like physical last appearance. So I think I'll have you on for that one, and then next time I'll probably have Kalu, because I think he would have been around for the others that would have shown up. And unless, of course, you guys want to do this as like a multi-person podcast as opposed to just like a guest.
We could do a multi-person podcast. That would be interesting.
All right. Well, in that case,
we can chat with Matt and see what he likes. See what he thinks. I don't know if he'll be available though. That's a question.
I can see that. But next, my question for next week is, can I get Boo Boo the Jolly's hair right? Ooh, because those two are going to be something.
Just give Boo Boo the Jolly a frickin' Ronald McDonald hairdo, and it'll be fine.
In Hero Forge, you can't do that.
Yeah, you can. Just give him the really curly afro looking thing, and then make it bright red.
But clowns are supposed to be rainbow. Anyway, thank you for being here, and we will catch. I'll catch you on Wednesday. I'll catch you on Wednesday, but we'll catch the stream next week, hopefully.
All right, sounds good. I will see you Wednesday.
See you Wednesday, and good night.
Good night.